this week is a special Shabbat. It's called Shabbat Chazon. Chazon means vision. And the actual technical term, Chazon, Shabbat Chazon, comes from the Haftarah, the prophetic reading that we'll read tomorrow morning. From the book of Isaiah, the first chapter of the book of Isaiah, where Chazon Yishayahu ben Amotz, Asher Chazah, this is the vision of Isaiah. But when we think about this Shabbat and its vision, and we think about visions of various prophets, one of the things that stands out, of course, is that prophets don't always tell us things about the future. They often tell us things about the past. And such is the case with Chazon Yeshayahu, even though he was envisioning a future, more accurately, he was describing a past for almost all of us who would one day read his words. A past that he wanted us to avoid. A calamitous past, a dangerous past, a past that was full of peril and destruction and pain. Isaiah, who prophesied about moral decay and about corruption, around a confusion in our values. His vision was a dark vision of what the world would look like if we continued to place human beings and the search for justice at the lowest rung of our value hierarchy. His words are profound. We'll read tomorrow. He says, Shimu shamayim v'azini aretz, listen sky, and give ear earth. Ki Adonai diber, for the one has spoken. Banim gadalti v'ramamti, I raised up children, and they have rebelled against me. Even an ox knows its owner, and a donkey its master's crib, but Israel does not know. My people takes no thought. It's hard to read his words. It's hard to read his words because even though prophets feel the need to speak in such a powerful way about what might become, he speaks in such finger pointing. His theology, and here I'm slightly shifting from this very, this introduction says that Baldwin and prophets are all saying things that are difficult to hear, but one of the things that's most painful to hear from the prophetic, certainly from Isaiah and in a moment from Moses, is a theology of blame, a theology of pointing the finger, a theology of laying at the feet of the Israelites at this moment or at any people how they could have done it better and why they weren't doing it well enough. And maybe prophets have to say that. And maybe in truth, without theology, maybe it was moral decay. It seems like it. It seems that people could have done a better job, maybe. It seems that at any given moment in human and Jewish history, humans could be doing a better job. I don't imagine there was any generation that didn't need a prophet to come along and say to them, you could be taking care of the poor more, of the oppressed. You could be making your values clearer. But what I'm struck by in the words of Isaiah and then in the words of Moses in a moment in the beginning of the book of Deuteronomy is how much laying at the feet of the people the prophet does. If you open the book of Deuteronomy, which is tomorrow morning's Torah portion, the beginning of the book of Dvarim, the fifth and final book of Torah, Moses begins to orate. It's the end of his life. And what's most noticeable about this moment is that Moses is angry, it seems to me, or I don't know about you. He's on the precipice of entering the land. He wants more than anything to get into the land. And he's looking out at this place that he will never be able to walk in, he'll never acquire it. It'll be a dream that never came to fruition, a hope that never was a vision, a chazon that was never accomplished. Who knows how long he longed to be in the land. And here he is on the verge, and he begins to retell the story to the people. And one of the things you recognize immediately in retelling the story is that Moses completely tells the story differently than the stories as they appeared earlier historically. I remember Rabbi Jill Hammer gave one of my top 10 sermons at Romamu that I remember vividly I remember when and how you gave it about the first midrash in the Torah was Moses midrashing on the spy story back in the book of Numbers. If you read the beginning of the book of Dvarim, book of Deuteronomy, Moses begins to tell the story, but before he gets to the story in telling the story of these spies that on whose account, right, all of the generation that left Egypt didn't make it into the land, he makes a huge mistake. He says that the reason why he was not allowed to get into the land, why he will not enter the land, is not because of what those of us remember, right? What was the sin of Moses when he didn't get into, why he was decreed that he wouldn't go to the land? Because what? He struck the rock. But what does Moses say in the first chapter of the book of Deuteronomy? It was your fault that I didn't get into the land. It wasn't my fault. It wasn't that I misheard or I rebelled against God and I hit the rock when he told me to speak to the rock. Moshe says, no, it was on your account. Remember that whole spy story? You were the reason why your ancestors couldn't get to the land, and it also hit me too. It's a remarkable moment. It's like, Moshe, just own and take ownership over your own mistake. Isn't that what a leader has to do? Don't blame the people. The reason your vision didn't become to fruition was not the people's fault, it was your fault. I think in thinking a lot about this moment in the world and now in our little small microcosm of the world, Shabbat Chazon, as the last Shabbat of Romu in this building, has a lot of these little features in a number of ways. So, and wait for a second for it. So one is that it's clear that there are things that are beyond our control. It's clear that human beings want more than anything to imagine that we have control over everything, including our thoughts and how they impact the world. One doesn't have to go farther than the New Age bookstore that I used to live in to imagine that there are all kinds of gurus telling us that our thoughts actually are the reason why the weather is the way it is, or the reason why you don't have as much money as you wish you had, or the reason why, a whole litany of things. But fundamentally, we're very, very limited in our powers. The world is a big place. This coming Monday night and Tuesday, we're going to talk about the destruction of the temples. The Mishnah in Ta'anit says that there are 5 things that happened on the 9th of Av. One of them, two of them were the temple's destruction, but one of them was that the spies were decreed not to go into the land. That was certainly their fault. But the temples, the prophets want us to believe that it was our fault. Maybe there's great moral value in thinking that if we just behaved in a certain way, the Roman Empire wouldn't come running through and take us along with the other 50, 60, 70 nations that it ran through on its way to world dominance. Maybe there's something valuable about that, saying that we have power, but there's also something dangerous about blaming ourselves for things that are well beyond our control. There are forces much greater than our small community, our small ego, our small sphere of influence. We have to know how much we can make an impact and know when we can't. And the wisdom between those two, of course, is huge. To not give up on making the influence and the improvements that we can, but also standing back and not blaming ourselves for more than what we can handle and more than we should handle. And so in some way, Isaiah and Moses, in my personal opinion, may be guilty of that moment. And maybe we as Jews, over time, because we were so much and so often in the crosshairs of huge historic movements that really we could not control, maybe we too began to think that the whole world revolved around us, you see. And if only we kept Torah, if only we did all these different things, then the world would be different. But maybe the reality was a little bit more complicated than that. And the second thing about this moment, of course, is that it's remarkable to me that Moses, in all of his tragic thinking about why he couldn't get into the land, missed an amazing moment, which is, thank God he didn't get into the land. In all of Moshe's disappointment about the vision that he thought he had and could see clearly, I'm supposed to be in the land, aren't I? There's something wrong with this picture. You see me Over here, I'm supposed to be over there. Moshe, in his resentment, and the word resentment is vital because it comes from the French to refeel. Moshe was resentment. He was feeling it over and over again. His loss, and he didn't realize that maybe exactly what happened, the tragedy of him not entering the land, was actually not a tragedy, but actually a gift. He didn't realize that in his intense focus on that vision that didn't come to fruition, he missed the truth, which was Moshe is ours, like he's our guy. Because Moshe didn't enter the land, 2,000 years of Jews thought, you know what, one day maybe I'll enter the land. Even Moshe didn't enter the land. Even Moshe didn't enter the land that I live in now and take for granted. Even Moshe didn't get there. That there's something about paradigm shifts that requires the release of one strongly held belief about the way things should have been in order to open ourselves to the way things might yet become. It's in that vein that I was sent the Torah from my dear friend Yossi, from the Abda Rabbi, from the Oav Yisrael, who quotes the Midrash. This Abda Rabbi was a great Hasidic Rabbi, Abraham Joshua Heschel, that was his name. He was the great-grandfather of the Abraham Joshua Heschel. And he quotes a Midrash that says that there was no yontif, there was no greater day as the day when the temple was destroyed. But wait a second. Tisha B'Av, we're going to be on the floor, we're going to be fasting on Monday and Tuesday. It's the worst day ever. But so much of Jewish history, in retrospect, could never have become what it was had we not had to shift our paradigm from the temple in Jerusalem to whatever emergent paradigm was coming along. And I wouldn't tell somebody, go destroy the temple so that the next emergent paradigm would come along. It's always precarious, right? But when the reality has already arrived, what's coming next can't come until we let go of what came before. It's just we have to shed. We have to shed. So here we are in this beautiful, not so beautiful, 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 amazing space. And for me personally, as a leader whose vision for this place and for the space across the street was a campus back in 2017, 18, and someone who, along with all of those here, know how hard we work to make that vision come to life. It became clear a year ago that something new is coming, that we don't yet know what the vision of it is. And I went through all kinds of moments where I blamed everybody. I blamed the world, I blamed the board, I blamed leadership. I told the story differently 15 different times. The reason why we didn't happen is because of all of you. If only we would have, And the truth is that the deeper teaching that I'm holding for myself tonight is what is being shed now that might allow something new to emerge. And I'm holding that also, not just for Roma, with a small blip on the radar. I'm thinking about it for our world. Like what is now being shed with all of its birth pangs, as the rabbis call it, Chevlei Mashiach. Something is, as one thinker called it, it's not the darkness of the tomb, but the darkness of the womb. What is it that is now being called forth? What's crumbling so that something new might emerge? And I'm holding that. I wonder if all of us are holding that on some level in your own personal lives, in our domestic lives here in America, in the world stage. When you're in the midst of a paradigm shift, it doesn't feel good. I think by nature, paradigm shifts suck. Yeah? I mean, like, it just feels like one Rabbi once said, it's like you're holding on by a thread, and someone is holding the thread and shaking it, and you're holding on, right? That's the image. And we're just holding on, right, for what's going to come. We don't know. But in this space, my wife my now wife, but then girlfriend and I had our ofruf and danced right over there. In this space, Yoni and Viv, Miriam, Shir, Meira, we danced. We had a table every Friday night with a tish after services. And the amazing woman who opened up, what was her name? Heather, who opened up this space, which was called Grosvenor House. Remember that? The Grosvenor House. And I felt that, by the way, I just want to say parenthetically that a really dear friend who helped start Romamu back in 2006 was named Ariel Cohen. And Ariel and I were once at Limud in UK, and we were looking for a street called Grosvenor. And we stopped a guy in England, and we were calling it Grosvenor. And the guy said, mate, it's Grosvenor, mate. And I was like, okay. And when this building came on the market, it was Grosvenor. Like for the first year, we were in Grosvenor. This space, was a space with bar and bat mitzvahs and b mitzvahs, a space with, with packed, right? And the first yeshiva experience of Rome happened in this building. And I'm just curious to find out, what's next. What will the new spaces that we as a community inhabit, what will they bring? And ultimately what our people, our tradition remembered, even though the doomsday declarations of Isaiah and Jeremiah and Moses were present, our people remembered one salient thing that I think we should remember here as a community. That what was important about the space wasn't about the space. What was vital in those spaces was not burned to the ground. It wasn't destroyed. One of my favorite stories in the Talmud is a story of a rabbi who during the Roman period was not allowed, the Romans didn't allow Jews to teach Torah in public. And this Hanani Mitradion was teaching Torah in public, and he was caught, and they brought him to a pyre, and they tied him to this pyre, and they lit it on fire, and first they put him in the Gilyon, they put him in the Torah, they wrapped him in a Sefer Torah, and then they lit it on fire. And the students who were standing around said to him, Rabbi, what do you see? And he said, I see a scroll burning and letters flying. And for Jews throughout the last 2,000 years, it didn't matter, right? The physical spaces were just spaces that held the letters that were flying, the souls that were alive, right? Space matters, but what's in the space, the letters, what animates it, the songs, the listening, the connection. In this beautiful building, we must have made thousands and thousands of free meals, right? Due to our incredible Chesed committee, and all of the people did service on Sundays. And outside on 105th Street in Amsterdam, there were tables twice a month with free food that was being handed out to people, and signs in English and in Spanish letting them know that they could come into this building. We gathered coats together to give out to people who are cold during the winter. And all of those things, they're not going anywhere. We're going to bring them with us. So even though these bookshelves don't have any books on them, we're taking the spirit of Romo with us wherever we go. That's what I believe. So I wanted to say, I wanted to sing with you the song from the end of Megillat Eicha, where after all of the lamentations and the blaming and the catastrophizing, all of it sad and powerful, we have this sentence from whoever wrote the book, Hashivenu Adonai Lecha v'nashuva. Let's come back again and again to that space of our spirit, of our hearts, and of what really makes the world a meaningful place to be.